Stephen Colbert issued an apology for Catherine, the Princess of Wales, after very crude and tasteless jokes that targeted her and her family 2 weeks ago. So let's take a look at his body language and his words to realize that, well, this is a good candidate for one of the worst apologies in the history of talk shows. Hello and welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my body language analysis and tips. Let's get down to it. First clues that we have is his body language before the actual apology starts. In the first clip, he doesn't say much, so keep an eye on his body language and his eyes.
I don't know if you have noticed, but we do a lot of shows, and I tell a lot of jokes. And I tell jokes about a lot of different things.
A couple of things happening at the same time, mainly that he's using the apparent fixing of the coffee mug on the table and the napkin to not look at the camera directly, to have something to do with his hands and try to shake off how awkward he feels. And I say awkward because that's what he projects in these few seconds. Now, he said, I tell a lot of jokes and I tell jokes about a lot of different things. And that is going to be important when you watch the following clip.
Mostly what everybody's talking about. And for the last 6 weeks to 2 months, everybody has been talking about the mystery of Kate Middleton's disappearance from public life.
So his first point is that he tells a lot of jokes about what everybody is talking about. That is a technique that can be called either framing or priming, as in you set up the concept that you are going to talk about, in this case, a tasteless joke, in relation to something else, which for this apology is a lot of jokes about what everybody is talking about. He does this to make the tasteless joke about Catherine and her family like this tiny thing in a vast amount of jokes about what everybody is talking about. And the everybody is important because that's also signaling that he doesn't get to pick the topics. He just jokes about what everybody is talking about. So right out of the gate, he wants his blunder to look as small as possible, and the topic itself, not even his responsibility. He says that for the past 6 weeks to 2 months, everybody has been talking about the mystery of Kate Middleton's disappearance from public life, which is false and misleading. Nobody was talking about any disappearance since the palace had made it very clear that Catherine had had surgery and she would not be out for public duties until after Easter. So there was no mystery at all. This is another way of using framing to make the topic look juicy and interesting when it was just gossip. And it definitely wasn't 6 weeks to 2 months. Again, he wants to make it seem like his actions were just a tiny event in a massive and long series of events, which is a lie. Not to mention that he calls her Kate Middleton, and for trying to be respectful and apologize, he doesn't even care that this is not the way she is addressed right now. And I'm sure that he would never say Diana Spencer, so you already know that he's doing it mainly for himself. Now, pay attention to his hands right at the beginning of the following clip, because he's going to show an interesting behavior.
And 2 weeks ago, we did some jokes about that mystery and all the attendant frou-fra in the reporting about that.
That small clap that you saw and heard was a way to release stress. At the same time, you see that his posture is hunched. He wants to look humble, but what he looks is frustrated and tense. You can almost feel that tension on his shoulders while doing this. These are the signals that suggest that his apology was not his idea, that he was forced to do this, and he is, well, not really doing a good job at all. Because there's another easily verifiable lie. He claims that the jokes were about the mystery and all the frou-fra and reporting about that. And the jokes were not about Catherine's mystery disappearance. No. The jokes were about something else.
By the seeming disappearance of Kate Middleton. Well, now, internet sleuths are guessing that Kate's absence may be related to her husband and the future King of England, William, having an affair. Oh no, my heart goes out to poor Kate.
So that's why I told you that the jokes were tasteless, because not only that Catherine was away because she had had important surgery, but he was making fun of her and her family, mentioning that rumor created by Giles Corrin during a drunken stupor, a rumor that Corrin has said way too many times with his own social media channels that he made it up. But Colbert didn't care about any of that. He made sure to go all in, and you can see his smug face back then, delighted that he was going to spill the tea about a family who just wanted privacy. But he did not only make a joke about William and Catherine. He also made sure to include another family who has been inexplicably drawn into this narrative.
So, I think we all know who the alleged other woman is. Say it with me. The Marchioness of Cholmondeley.
Now, this is the thing that really reveals what kind of person Colbert is. Because he's naming people directly. And not only naming them directly, but he's also mocking their names. So if you think this sounds like bullying, well, it is. He's acting exactly like a school bully. But when you think that he has reached the end of the joke, and maybe some kind of common sense can dawn on him, he continues.
Since 2019, according to tabloids back then, when Kate supposedly confronted him about it, he laughed it off, saying there was nothing to it. Aha.
And believe it or not, the joke doesn't end there. He keeps on mentioning the Marchioness of Chunli again and her husband. And just so you know, an interesting fact is that this skit back then was longer than the duration of his apology. So that tells you a lot about Colbert's priorities, morals, and ethics. I showed you this clip so you could confirm that he really tried to make it seem that the jokes were just about the mysterious disappearance and the crazy reporting, when it was not. Well, so far, we have noticed that he is neither good at cracking jokes or apologizing. And also, notice that he said, we did some jokes, trying to dilute his own responsibility about this. But now, in the next clip, there are going to be two clues. One verbal in the middle and one nonverbal right at the end. Let's see if you can catch them.
When I made those jokes, that upset some people. And even before her diagnosis was revealed. And I can understand that.
The verbal clue is that he said before her diagnosis was revealed, like her diagnosis was revealed with a formal statement from the palace. But no, the diagnosis was revealed by Catherine herself, so he could have said before she revealed her diagnosis. But he didn't. He wants to keep as much distance from the topic as possible, be as neutral as possible, and that's why he speaks in generic terms, before her diagnosis was revealed. The nonverbal clue is that head shake when he says, I can understand that. You know that shaking your head can mean other things besides denying, but in this case, we can assume that, no, he doesn't really understand why people got so upset. And that's why he's denying with his head. And what he's about to say in the following clip confirms that body language clue.
I mean, a lot of my jokes have upset people in the past. And I'm sure some of my jokes will upset people in the future. But
you might have noticed the pattern repeating again. A lot of my jokes have upset people in the past, and I'm sure some of my jokes will upset people in the future. This is to say that this is not really a big deal. This is just another joke that didn't land so well with the public. The same framing. This is just a tiny event in a vast amount of events. Why are you making so much noise about this? So, we have reached halfway through the apology, and he hasn't really apologized. Maybe we will get lucky in the following clip.
There's a standard that I try to hold myself to, and that is I do not make light of somebody else's tragedy.
This is virtue signaling. No apology yet, by the way. He's making sure to tell everyone that he's got standards, and he talks about those standards with gravitas and solemnity. I guess because practically all the apology has been about himself. So he wants everyone to know how important his so-called standards are. But by this point, And even if you never heard about the concept of framing, you have a very good idea that Colbert is using framing to downplay the severity of what he did. And in the next clip, there's another example of framing, but this time, you have to pick it up on your own.
I don't know whether her prognosis is a tragic one. She's the future Queen of England, and I assume she's going to get the best possible medical care.
Two things. He claims that he doesn't know whether her prognosis is a tragic one. He's claiming ignorance about the topic. How can I possibly know? That's another way of subtracting responsibility. I made those jokes back then, but I couldn't possibly know that something bad was going on. You see how that reasoning is fallacious? That if he didn't know if the situation was actually bad, he shouldn't have made those jokes in the first place? And the second thing is to make sure to mention that she's the future Queen of England and she's got the best possible care, which is not exactly a lie, but he adds that sentence to, again, make it seem that her diagnosis should not be that much of a big deal because, after all, she's got access to the best healthcare in the world. Framing to downplay the severity of the situation, and he hasn't apologized yet. Now, we are on the last lap of this, and this is the moment when Colbert finally says something remotely humane, in generic terms, of course.
And I'm sure many of you, far too many of us, know that any cancer diagnosis is harrowing for the patient and for their family.
So, if you came here for an apology, I'm afraid to tell you that ain't gonna happen. But Colbert's video is not over yet, and there are still a couple things worth mentioning. He's about to send well wishes to Catherine and her family, but first, he does this.
Though I'm sure they don't need it from me.
Yeah, before sending the wishes, he tries to play the humble guy again, claiming that what's coming next, they don't need it from him. And well, when you think about it, well wishes can be accepted from anybody. The problem is that what we have seen so far from Colbert has all the signs of not being sincere at all. And then, the well wishes.
I and everyone here at The Late Show would like to extend our well wishes and heartfelt hope that her recovery is swift and thorough.
I found it really funny that there was this huge dissonance in his face right at the end of the well wishes. You remember that we had already come to the conclusion that he was forced to give this apology? Well, look at this. I'm going to cover the bottom half of his face so you can focus on his eyes. Wide open, with his eyebrows raised. He's trying to make that contact with the audience, to show some goodwill. But just with the upper half of his face. Because what happens with the bottom half? Well, present lips can have many meanings, from frustration to anger to regret. What I can say is that he was not comfortable at all doing this, and we could say that it would be due that he's sorry, but we already discarded that. He's not really sorry, so the other option is that the lip pressing is because he was forced to do this. So, what's the scorecard? He never said I'm sorry or anything of the sort. He never tried to clear things up about the gossip he used for his jokes back then, which damaged two families, and he spent the full 2 minutes minimizing the severity of his actions and the scope of his responsibility on this. This is why I tell you that, yes, this is one of the worst apologies that I have seen, ever. But I would still like to know what do you think about this in the comments. And don't forget to download my free 100 body language tips in the description of this video. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas, I'm the body language guy, and remember, much love and bliss.